So, how am I handling quarantine? Well, I've been jamming out to BTS's new album. I've been trying to make a dent in my TBR shelf. Drowning my sorrows in pizza. Going on socially distanced walks with my children. And pretending that stalking my neighbors counts as social interaction. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori. Today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read in the month of March. Now I read 9 books in March, which is ironically exactly half of the number of books I read in February. I don't know what I was smoking in February, but I clearly wasn't smoking it in March. In March, I wanted to take a step back. I wanted to slow down and stress less for obvious reasons. It's been crazy. I personally am a hidden extrovert, which basically means that most of my family and most of my friends are introverts, and I'm not as much. So I'm not okay. Part of what is helping me survive is reading, and also you guys, because I love making videos for you and I love the discussions we have down in the comments. So thank you so much for interacting and enjoying my channel. I've been having a blast. So without further ado, here are the books that I read in March. The first book that I read in March was Kings of the Wyld by Eames. Ooh, is this a good book? This was a good month. I had so many really entertaining, fun reads, and Kings of the Wyld was a riot to start off with. This book, if you are a fantasy nerd, if you're a video game nerd, if you're a Dungeons and Dragons nerd, if you are a nerd in general, you will probably like this book. This is a fantasy book that does not take itself very seriously, but it is a fantastically written story with amazing characters and a great fast-paced plot line. It is so good. It has a Motley Crue theme. It has some great friendships. Eames had this great ability to go from hysterically funny to literally breaking your heart in like 2 minutes. It was crazy. The best part is Eames actually designed this whole book around the idea of 70s and 80s rock bands. I'm done. I'm done. The second book that I read in March was Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. I did a review of this on my channel. I will link it in the description box below so you can go watch it if you want. Really enjoyed this book. It's Neil Gaiman's retelling of The Jungle Book in a graveyard, because who knew we needed that? In typical Neil Gaiman style, it's very dark, very whimsical, it has great characters, really human themes, and for being kind of a high middle grade read, I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was fantastic, highly recommended. Next, I started reading Brandon Sanderson's Steelheart, which is the first book of his Reckoners trilogy, which starts with Steelheart, then goes to Firefight, and finishes with Calamity. Now, usually when it comes to books like this, where they're not very long, they're really action-packed and fast-paced. I typically burn through an entire series or trilogy one after the other. However, as much of a Brandon Sanderson fan as I am, this is probably my least favorite read of his to date. I did a review of this book also on my channel. I will link that below. But overall, there were some very unbelievable things in here. The characters felt more flat to me than his normal work. The Reckoners trilogy basically is a superheroes trope that is smashed and turned on its head, and Brandon Sanderson is writing it. So, I mean, honestly, it's not something that I wouldn't recommend reading if you want something really fast-paced that's just kind of lighthearted and has some awesome, interesting superhero trope smashing happening. Go for it, read it, it's great. The next book I read this month was A Black Fox Running, which honestly, this book is one of my favorite book covers I think I have ever purchased on Bookoutlet. This book is told from the perspective of a fox named Wolfgar, who is kind of in this cat and mouse hunt game with a trapper who is a really, really interesting villain. It has some Jack London meets like Redwall vibes. It got pretty wordy in a lot of places. However, I will say that this is some of the most beautifully written prose I have ever read. The man can describe like blades of grass in the most poetic way. It's kind of amazing. The next book that I read this month was a graphic novel called Estranged by Aldridge. This book, It's beautiful. The artwork inside this is really lovely. It's very cool. It's kind of a Prince and the Pauper idea with two boys. One is human, one is a fairy prince, and they get swapped at birth. Now they're trying to together save the world of the fairies. Now, I liked this book. The artwork was absolutely incredibly beautiful. In my opinion, some of the political commentary that came through this was a little heavy-handed for my taste. It's a solid, good story. I just...
meh, you know, I don't know what else to say about it.
The next book I read was Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell. This is the first de Castell book I have ever read, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. This is kind of a mix-up of Egyptian kind of mythology and culture meets mages meets cards and like Wild West without the gunslinging. This isn't like the most incredible epic plot or storyline that I've ever come across. However, the characters were very endearing. It's a very fast-paced plot. I did order book 2. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the series, which apparently has like 6 or 7 books in it, so I'm glad I enjoyed it. But also, look at the cover. It's beautiful. All right. The next book I read was The Lost Boy by Christina Henry, which is a dark, twisted retelling of Peter Pan and James Hook, and basically it makes Peter out to be the villain. This is an incredible commentary on narcissism and what it does to the people around you. I did a review of this book and a reading vlog where you can follow my journey through reading this book. Whew, this was a tough read, but honestly I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I found it to be very well written, very thought-provoking, and just definitely made me look at Peter Pan a completely different way. The next book that I read, I also did a review of, which I'll post in the comments below. The Lies of Locke Lamora by Lynch. Now this book has been recommended to me over and over again, and I finally read it as a buddy read with one of my other fantasy-obsessed friends. Absolutely loved this book. If you like heists and motley crews of thieves and like underdogs and really intricately created con games, ooh, this book. It is a gritty world. Lynch pulls no punches. He has a great sense of humor, and he does a great job of setting up distinct styles of humor within his characters. If you are a fantasy nerd and you have not read this book yet, it's good. Highly recommended. The last book that I read this month was Wish by Barbara O'Connor. I tried to do a middle grade March read-along. I think I'm really solidly in an adult fantasy mood right now, and so this book was a little bit hard, especially considering the fact that I was reading The Lies of Locke Lamora alongside this. It was a very jarring pair of books to read next to each other. However, this book was okay. I liked it more toward the end. It follows a typically angsty, middle school aged girl who comes from a broken family, has all sorts of emotional problems, abandonment issues. She goes to live with her aunt and uncle and is determined to hate the place that she goes and not befriend anybody, and we know how that goes. She ends up befriending a boy named Howard, who is honestly a perfect character. Again, another thing about middle grade, I know, I get it, it's supposed to be light and fluffy, but come on, we do not need to have perfect characters. I really didn't particularly like the main character, Charlie. I understand she's having a hard time with her life. I get it, it's fair. But at the same time, there's only so much brattiness you can take before you're just kind of like... So anyway, I gave this a 2.5 to 3 stars. I thought the ending wrapped everything up pretty well, and I liked Charlie better at the end because she actually started to recognize that she was kind of playing victim a lot and finally apologized for it. So I'm happy about that. Okay, that is the end of my March wrap-up. Let me know in the comments what you guys' favorite book that you read in March was, and I will see you in the next video.